welcome back to another episode on the British Maritime Training and Assessments podcast. And today we are exploring from uniform to civilian, the transfer from military to maritime careers. So, within this episode, we are going to be looking at options for veterans and those who are coming out of the services, those maritime recruiters who are potentially looking for skilled workforce or people coming into the industry, and a little bit advice from us as training experts. And I'm pleased to say that I have Sam Samuels again with us on the podcast. How are we doing, Sam?
Yeah, good to be here again, Owen. Thank you.
Okay, so the military and the maritime industry, again, it might not seem like initially an obvious fit, but I think there is an awful lot of skills that are transferable between the two. So, Sam, could you just give us sort of a bit of an introduction? Obviously, you were in the military and you came over to the sort of maritime side. Can you sort of give us an overview for those who are sort of listening for the first time about your military background and how you sort of transferred over?
Yeah, I did served 27 years in the Royal Navy. I did a 4-year craft apprenticeship. So I had a very good skill of hand. Um, Looking back on it, the academics I did as an apprentice were exactly the same as the academics that the cadets and the trainees do coming through on this route, and the level that the MCA require of seafarers coming in at the engineer officer watch level. Um, Obviously, different types of ships, different routines, different numbers of crew. However, the ethos was still the same: the discipline, the requirement to work under pressure, having the ability to work solely, but also to work within a team. So all of these elements are there, and also the fact that you get used to being away from home for a long period of time. So yeah, generally the fit is very, very close. However, what I would say is there is a reluctance of people sometimes in the military to recognise their skills, and likewise with the merchant navy to recognise the skills within the merchant navy and see that there is a transferable area. A lot of work is being done through it, but there's still this invisible barrier.
And I can only imagine, obviously, from my point of view of being at sea and then coming shoreside, but particularly life after service and coming out of the military, a lot of those veterans must be quite an emotional and professionally challenging sort of time leaving the military.
Yeah, you are well looked after by the military. The advantage of the military is that you know that you're going to have a job from one week to the next. And when you step outside of that safeguard, you lose everything from your medical to your fitness. Yes, you are prepared, but then you have to start fending for yourself. Things that the average civilian has got used to doing, you've got to learn from scratch. So it can be a little bit disturbing. Also, the fact is you're used to a lot of change. You like the fact that you never do the same job. I always say it was the same uniform, but different job every 4 years. And so you look for change, you look for variety, and that's why an awful lot of ex-servicemen will transfer from one job to another.
Yeah, and there are support networks within the military in terms of training, upskilling, and getting you ready for life out of the service.
Oh yeah, you get a very good package when you come to leave. They try and educate you and fund you. So if you are in the military and you are looking to transfer across and you think that the merchant navy would be a fit for you, certainly use your allowances that you get to do the basic and fundamental courses.
Yeah, and I think, and again, I'm putting words in your mouth here almost, but certainly I can imagine from the military sort of background and then transferring into another sort of career path or another industry, th- it occurs to me that those type of people certainly they're after purpose, structure, and lots of teamwork within a civilian based role.
Yeah, you're trained to work in a set way. Unlike the merchant navy, the Royal Navy strip you back when you first join. They create you into the thinking and doing type of person. But that fit exists in the merchant navy. So you would find yourself moving in very quickly. You've got the camaraderie, you've got the travel, you've got the discipline, and all of those things are there. So yeah, it looks difficult, but on the reality of it, when I walked into even teaching to the Merchant Navy, I could see the comparison.
So I guess the question is then for those who are looking for a career pathway after the military is why maritime? So certainly that there are many similarities between the military and the maritime environment. So just off the top of my head, the discipline hierarchy, the technical skills. Where do you see these similarities between military and the maritime environment? Sort of where are the crossings? Where are the similarities? What are the differences, both seagoing and shoreside?
Educationally, I think it's very difficult to tell because the Navy constantly move the goalposts with what they require. But I think if you're at a certain level, if you're at a technical level, you have the ability to move across, and we see quite a few of them coming through. Again, the MCA don't make it desperately easy. There's lots of hoops to jump through, but if you can get onto the right bandwagon, you can get into the right service provider. There are people who will help and will guide you. The one thing that I see as a huge advantage is the fact that in the military you're tied in. If you don't like a ship, it's tough. You just have to get on with it. Whereas at least with the merchant navy, if you go to a type of vessel or you take on a job and it's not for you, it's not for a fit for you, you get to the nearest port and then you sign yourself off and you can then go and start again. You're not tied in. And I think for many people that is a sweetener. It means that you don't have to go through the pain. I know people who've joined ships and been stuck on the same ship for 3 years, being sent away to parts of the world they don't really want to go to, and as a result, have become disillusioned. Where at least with the merchant navy, you get the option. If you don't like it, you can pack up and move on.
Yeah, and certainly on the shore side sort of roles as well, bringing in that discipline hierarchy and the technical skills. I know an awful lot of the maritime businesses, they're really after the skill sets from the military in terms of attitude, application, concentration, like I said, discipline, and respect for attention to detail as well.
Yeah, and I think the military sell that, and it is out there, but I won't do the merchant navy an injustice because I've seen the same skills exist. It's just the fact that as a merchant navy officer, you don't go out there selling them in quite the same way. So even if you don't want to go to sea, certain military wise, you're available, and people will automatically accept it. But turn the tables a little bit. If you're in the merchant navy, you too have those skill sets which you can put out there and sell to people shoreside, and very quickly they'll realize that you're a good fit for the role they want.
Yeah, so in terms of the maritime industry and the career paths available, just throwing some of the aspects we've sort of spoken about in the other episodes. So engineering, logistics, vessel operations, offshore energy, port management, etc. Where do you see different roles in the military? So maybe army and other aspects as well. Where do you see those skill sets fitting in terms of the maritime skill sets that we've just sort of mentioned?
Certainly from an engineering perspective, I think engineering is engineering. Every engine is slightly different, but the principles exist. And like every good engineer, you wouldn't just go down and start stripping the bit of kit apart. You'd do some research. So I would say that skill sets are very good from the military. They will make sure that you can do the nuts and bolts stuff. Um, Deck wise, if you look at the association we have um, with the RFA, we train RFA deck officers to go and work on RFA vessels, and then they will transfer across periodically to go and work on the Royal Navy. So it demonstrates that there is direct correlation between both elements. Probably the big difference is when you're on a military vessel, you're training to go into um, contentious environments, whereas you would like to think that the merchant navy is probably slightly more laid back.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those skill sets again, time management, maturity is a big one. Um, organization and so forth can transfer into the logistics, vessel operations, and so forth. So there is plenty of options there. So if someone was coming out of the military and wanted to explore a route in maritime, what are the training and certification pathways?
Um, a bit like anybody at the moment, they are going to need their what we call or define as short courses, STCW courses, those which will make you safe at sea. Some of those directly, certainly within the Royal Navy, are aligned across. If you're in an army unit which puts you to sea, you will also have those skill sets. And the MCA will look at them and they will decide whether or not they directly transfer. Educationally wise, there is a notification out there. There's a memorandum of understanding between the certainly with the Royal Navy and the Armed Forces, with the Merchant Navy, and the details are laid down on there. And you would end up having to come to a college and applying and getting a letter of initial assessment, which will look at all your qualifications. They will look at the standard. They will look at whether they correlate to what the Merchant Navy require, and then they will move you across, and they will give you ideas as to what you've got to do in order to get yourself into the system and where you would fit in the system. You don't have to start at the bottom. Certainly, if you've got a charge qualification, as they call in the military, you can actually move across quite simply.
Yeah, and there's other options as well. So, if you're looking more on sort of the operations side, there's things like skills boot camps. So, the Marine Electrician Skills Boot Camp that's delivered within the Solent region by ourselves. And there's also the Transports and Logistics Skills Boot Camp, which is delivered at the time of the recording by the South Hampshire College Group. So there are options for short, fast courses there. You could even look at evening qualifications. Many of the training providers nationally will provide adult skills funding, and you can look at those things. And but just full stop, any sort of educational skills boot camps in any area is available. So just looking at a little bit more about the available transition programs and funding available. Um, there's the Veterans Grant, there's Maritime Academies fundings. You might even look down the cadetship route if you're not particularly highly qualified, perhaps in your current military role. There's quite a few funding options available, and the DWP do quite a bit as well.
Yeah, and you also get a resettlement package with the Royal Navy if you've done a certain amount of time. They want to make sure that you're fit for moving on into the civilian world. And as you and I have seen, we've seen many ex-military coming in at the cadet level, but also in the small vessel world, people going onto super yachts. Again, they can come through. Some of those courses will be able to be funded again by your resettlement package. And again, I've seen some quite senior people coming through and using those grants to get them in that position.
Yeah, and I think like as we sort of mentioned already, there is a big hunger from local employers and national employers for the um, ex-military and the workforce that the characteristics and attributes, I suppose, more than anything that they bring. Because I think it's fair to say, though certainly I know quite a few companies who don't even look at qualifications anymore. They actually look at the person and the experiences rather than the qualifications, because they can train people internally to do a job, but they can't train attitudes and personalities.
Yeah, and you come with that attitude. You don't realize it, and I think that's part of the problem. And I think that's part of what the military aren't very good at. Sometimes they undersell themselves because they're just used to doing what they do day by day, and they don't recognize how it fits in the wider world. So I think if you are military, you do want to try and sell yourself, sell those skill sets, and appreciate that you've got diversity. The things that you've done go a long way, and people don't actually do that in the real world.
Yeah, and there's definitely a scope for mentoring other people as well, and I think that's a good thing to sort of consider is the leadership and management skill sets that ex-military the veterans come with, and actually that can be really useful for mentoring and supporting new people coming through. So even things like education in maritime and other aspects is certainly an interesting route for veterans to sort of explore. So more of a personal aspect for you then. Uh, how did you adapt to coming out of the military? What were the sort of key turning points and surprises in terms of civilian lifestyle and civilian work?
I found when I first came out and worked in a very sort of civilian orientated environment, they didn't get your humor. And I had to tailor that down. I had to really try and understand how people ticked, and it felt quite cold, and everybody just did a job and went home. I was used to living with people. I was used to, even if you weren't at sea, you still had that esprit de corps when you came shoreside. So for me, that was very difficult, and I found that hard to slip into. Also, the fact that you step up because things need to be done is often frowned upon because so many people wouldn't step up unless there was money or time off involved in it, and so you were often looked at a bit strange. I was just used to doing it because it needed to be done. When I started meeting with the Merchant Navy and I was working in that environment, I realized that the mindset, the attitude, the humor, they all existed in exactly the same way. And although wearing different uniforms, sailing under a different flag, so to speak, the the attitude and the moral values was still the same. So for me, that was very good. The other thing that I missed out on, and I made the point, is the fact that you don't have the change. Every 4 years when I was in the military, I would move job, whether it be staying at sea or moving to a teaching job or even an outward bound job. And to come shoreside is tough. You don't get that every 4 years. Companies want loyalty. And so for me, when I moved into Warsash, after 4 years, I got promoted and the job role changed. So it satisfied that. I did another 4 years and then I got promoted and it satisfied again. And so gradually you work it out your system. But yes, we are used to change. We are used to variety. We're not good at 9 to 5.
Yeah, and again, the maritime industry, just by its pure nature, both seagoing and shoreside, is constantly changing. Different vessel types coming in, different problems, different environment, different weather, you name it. It just keeps changing. So, how how difficult was it to shift your mindset from sort of a service and command methodology to a corporate teamwork aspect?
Um, it's not hugely difficult. You just have to modify your expectations of others. Um, there is also a change if you are somebody who relies on the disciplinary approach. It's very difficult. I never needed discipline in a sense. I used personality, but if you're somebody who's used to shouting and someone jumps to do it, then that will cause problems because it's not well received by many people. But generally, it was an easy fit. I just had to understand the world I was going into and then use the skills that I had to adapt into that world. And for me, it felt like coming home in a strange way.
And if we move on then to sort of advice for those transitioning veterans, what practical steps would you sort of highlight for them to take initially in terms of preparing for that transition? So before they actually make the jump, what would you sort of recommend in terms of preparation steps?
Talk to your resettlement office is certainly one that's going to go a long way. Look around at colleges that are offering open days. So obviously we run ours at Solent, but they are around the country. So you're not driven just by staying down south. You can stay up in Scotland or up in the northeast. So there's options there. Go and visit those. Do some research. Understand what the role does, because again, much the same as what you did at sea, the Merchant Navy do the same. But it's worth understanding that you're going to be working on a different type of vessel, different mode of operation in the fact that you're not necessarily going to be going away for huge amounts of time, and work out what you need, not what the service requires of you. If you wish to be home every couple of weeks, then maybe going on cruise ships is not for you. Maybe going on a ferry, much the same as you went on your boat across to the Channel Islands every week. Sometimes that will suit people. So make sure you do the research in that area. And yes, just generally try and find people who are in the service and talk to them.
Yeah, and I think again, looking at shoreside roles, we've sort of spoken about it before. A lot of the marina jobs, you can get into warranty, you can get into sales if you're interested, and again, they will come with travel, installation repairs and things like that. So again, you can still maintain that international travel. You might just want a 9 to 5 in a marina or a boat builder, where you can look at roles such as marine electrical, marine engineering, boat building, shipwrights, or anything like that, shoreside. And again, there's lots of opportunities there. I think networking is quite a big thing. I know it's not for everyone, but a decent, sensible LinkedIn profile can be quite powerful these days.
Yeah, it goes a long way. And just going back to what we're talking about, obviously I focus on engineering, but some examples, you look at people who do logistics. I knew people who were caterers and stewards, and they moved very nicely across into the merchant world. And in fact, a very good friend of mine was actually working on a cruise ship when I met him, and he was working in the supply department there, and he absolutely loved it. He saw it as just a different uniform, but the same job. So again, shoreside, seaside, however you want to do it, there are opportunities.
And it can be difficult, that transfer and that abnormality of coming out. So how would you sort of talk to someone, or what advice would you give them in terms of support available for mental health and community support of those transferring into, we call it like the civvy world?
There are many organizations out there. The military is very, very mindful of people struggling when they come outside. You do have the services provided by the veterans. We have people from the British Legion who will help. Even simple things like consulting a GP. You'd be surprised how many doctors really understand the difficulty that people have. So it is tough. I wouldn't deny it. But don't shy away from it and don't hide it. Go and start talking to people, and you will see wherever you are, these things are signposted. And the military is one of those areas that is high profile at the moment. And so the evidence of their support network is everywhere.
And if we sort of bring this to a close, what would be your final tips and motivational takeaways from this podcast, from this episode, in terms of military to maritime careers?
First of all, don't underestimate the skill set you've got. You are going to be different from everybody else. Things that you take for granted, the fact that you may have done practical leadership training in the field, the fact that you may have done certain courses, are unique. So don't be shy. Get those out there. Put them on your CV. When you're writing your CV, demonstrate your ability to work alone, to work as a team, to be adaptable and flexible. That will go a long way. But most of all, believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself, you'll be surprised how much employers will believe you. And when you start going out looking for jobs, people will like your personality, and then they will check your qualifications and probably do everything they can to align you because they want you as a person. And as you said, Owen, not just your qualifications.
Yeah, I think a huge, huge part of it, a lot of what I hear from employers and people I've worked with, it is your attributes, your characteristics, your discipline, your attention to detail. These are the areas that you're really sought after. And I go back to it, many, many employers now are not interested in the CV and the qualifications necessarily. It's about the person you are, the personality, the characteristics, and the attributes you bring, because they can't be taught, whereas certain specialisms can. So certainly those are the aspects you have to consider. And I think the key thing is forward planning, making sure you're having a good review at what you want to do, what interested you, what the different pathways are that are available to you. Don't make any knee jerk sort of decisions, and work with those bodies and those resettlement units that are available for you to support you. So that brings a close to this episode on from uniform to civilian, military to maritime careers. I hope it gives you sort of an insight. But if anyone does have any questions regarding transferring the skill sets, please do speak to your advice and guidance teams, or drop us an email at info@bmta.net, and we're more than happy to try and help and support and point you in the right direction. And as always, anyone who can afford it, please do take the time to have a look at our charity of the year. Any donations are greatly appreciated. And that wraps up this episode. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.